Hi there, how are you doing? I hope you're doing fantastic. So in today's video, I'm just going to tell you about all the books I read in the past 3 months, which is January, February and March. So for me, March is not quite finished yet, but I know that I'll be able to finish up only one book before the end of the month. So let's just get into the video. I'm gonna open my Goodreads app because I have a shelf on there which is called Books I Read in 2020, and I'm just gonna go from there, from the first book I read in 2020 till the last one in this past 3 months. So another thing that I wanted to mention is that I'm not going to be talking what the book is about. I'm just going to share my opinion because you can find so many short synopsis or, summaries of the books in this video that will be much better than I could just try to explain anyways. So I'm just going to share with you my opinion, what I thought of the book, and I'm also not going to show the physical copies because most of them are with a Russian cover. So I'm just gonna pop a picture here of the cover of the book that you would be more familiar with if you're from America or Europe. So let's get into them. The first book I read in 2020 was Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. And honestly, I did not like it. I had so much hope for this book and I had so much expectations for it, and it just did not meet my personal expectations. I think the book is written amazingly, the language and everything, but the story itself, I did not enjoy it. I didn't enjoy the characters, and even though I think that you don't have to love the characters to love the book, in this book, I didn't care about them at all. You can hate the character but still feel compelled by his story and still feel interested in what's gonna happen. With the characters in this book, I didn't care for the outcome of their life, honestly. Also, I didn't exactly see any growth from most of the characters from beginning till the end, and it was very disappointed. A lot of people call this book like the greatest love story of all time. I just think it's two egotistical people who were obsessed with each other in a quite unhealthy way, and I just didn't see this book as the greatest love story, and I was just highly disappointed. But I would still say that you should read this book and make up your own mind, because I've seen so many people who love this book. Even my mom absolutely loved the book. She thought that it was a great love story, and she read it right after me, so all the emotions were fresh, and under the same roof, we had two completely different interpretations and opinions of the book. You should definitely read it and make up your own mind, and if you have read it, let me know in the comments below. Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Were there things that you loved? What are the things that you hated? I would just really be interested to know, because this book is considered so amazing and I just didn't feel the same. The second book I read is I Am the Messenger by Markus Zusak. I think this man is a genius. After I read The Book Thief, I knew he was a genius, and then I bought I Am the Messenger, and even though I've never heard about this book before, the synopsis on the back was kind of like, whatever, I still bought this book because it was by Markus Zusak, and I was not disappointed. I truly think that this book should be more talked about, because I am very in this book world. I know a lot of, top 100 books you should read, and I feel like this book should be in there because it is incredible, and this is just a book about life. I think anyone should read this book, especially if you feel lost in your life, if you feel unmotivated, if you feel like your life has no meaning, or just in general, if you're alive, I think you should read this book. If there is one fiction book out of this video that you'll read, I'm definitely gonna say I'm the Messenger by Markus Zusak. The next book was Emma by Jane Austen. I'm gonna be honest, I love Jane Austen. Every single book I've read from her is incredible. I love it so much. My favorite will still have to be Pride and Prejudice though. It's the first book by Jane Austen I've read and I still love it to death. I love the characters Jane Austen writes. They're just incredible. They're on another level. And Emma is another character that you at times hate, at times love, at times you feel, oh, she's just like me, and at other times you feel, oh, I would never do that, that's so stupid, why is she doing that? And I love that because she's human and she has flaws and she has positive sides, and everything about her is just so human. Another thing I love is how Jane Austen writes male characters. I don't know how she does that, but they're perfect, especially the main male characters that she writes, you know, the main like love interests and stuff like that. They're perfect. And even though they do have their own flaws and they sometimes are pretty stupid or, you know, egotistical or, you know, have different flaws, they're still wonderful. And the language of the book and the humor of the book, you know, the wit and that Jane Austen possesses, it's just amazing. And Jane Austen books are seriously one of the ones that I would definitely say, like, you should read them. Next book I read is The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F by Mark Manson. So this book was highly recommended by a lot of people who were really into self-help, self-development books. What I'll have to say is that this book is not groundbreaking. It's not world-changing. What other words like this, what other phrases like this can I use? But it's true. I didn't feel like a whole new person or 100% motivated after reading this book, but it did bring up some very interesting points. Even though for me personally, maybe for other people it did, but for me personally, who's really interested into like self-development content, it didn't bring up any new groundbreaking ideas. But what it did, it's just like nailed them even more into my brain, and it just brought them up and was like, hey, you know this is exactly why you should do this, and this is how this is gonna help you, and this is what you should really not care about. And I went into this book expecting something completely different, but I was not disappointed. So it's quite a great self-help book. I wouldn't say it's the best one out there, but it's definitely worth a read. Next book is The Girl in the Train by Paula Hawkins. And to be honest, this is the book, when I picked it up, I was very hesitant because I've never read thrillers before. It was my first ever thriller experience. And I'm not even a big fan of thriller movies, so I was really hesitant to read the book. But I can tell you that this book is incredible. I have never felt like it's quite easy for a book to bring out emotions in me because I'm a very emotional person as it is, but I've never felt uneasy and in danger whilst reading a book, and this is exactly what I felt whilst reading this book. When I was reading the pages, I just caught myself feeling tense and uneasy and almost like something was about to happen to me, which is a very weird feeling whilst reading a book. And it just kept me on the edge of the seat. This book is crazy. I really want to watch the movie. I still haven't gotten around to it, but I will tell you that this was an amazing first thriller to read, and I highly enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it. So yeah, The Girl on a Train will really make you feel things. The next book I read is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, and I can tell you that I really enjoyed the theme that the book brought up, but I will have to say that it just felt a little bit bland for me, to be 100% honest. Like, in this video, I'm 100% honest. I enjoyed the book, I enjoyed the theme that it brought up, but the book just felt a bit empty in a way. And I know that these books don't have to be like action-packed and stuff like that, and I don't really like action-packed or like action movies, action books. This is just not my cup of tea usually, but this book just really felt like nothing happened. And honestly, at times I just didn't even understand if it happened all in one day or over a couple of days, and it did happen over a couple of days, maybe even like weeks. I don't remember. I read it like 2 months ago. But it wasn't one day, but it literally felt like all the events that happened throughout the whole book could have like happened in one day, like easily. So I don't know, I think that this book was, yeah, just a bit bland. Another book that I would recommend that literally brings up a very similar theme is by Zamyatin, and it is We or Us. I always mistaken it because it's a book by a Russian author. I read it in Russian, so I always mistaken how it's called. It's either Us or We. So I'm just gonna pop it on the screen as well. That book I enjoyed much more. I read it over summer and I still remember everything, and it was incredible. The next 2 books I'm gonna kind of pop into, you know, talk about them at the same time is Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus by John Gray, and also Venus on Fire, Mars on Ice, Hormonal Balance, The Key to Life, Love and Energy by the same author, John Gray. This is another book that if you read only one book from this whole list, I would say Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus by John Gray. If you want to have good communication with the opposite sex, or even with your own sex, it doesn't really matter, but if you want to have, like, if you want to be able to understand the opposite sex, if you want to be able to communicate and to save your energy, to save their energy, you know, not be stressed about the communication, you should read this book. If you're a woman, if you're a man, it doesn't matter. Anyone above the age of like 15, 16, I would say, should definitely read this book, because trust me, when I was reading this book and I was reading like stuff about women, I was like, yeah, that's true, that's true, that's true. When I was reading stuff about men, I was like, wow. And I actually used some of the techniques to communicate with my male friends, and it has definitely worked. Like, it just seems like they understand me better, and our relationship as a whole is just better because I understand that, hey, this is how their brains work, and it is slightly different to how females' brains work, but this is just the thing. And by understanding this, I take less things personally, I understand them better, as I said, and it's just a better thing overall. So yeah, the first book is more like general knowledge, the second one is more about hormones and stress, so if you had to read only one, I would recommend the first one. The next book is by J.D. Salinger, and it is The Catcher in the Rye. I didn't like this book. I don't know, this is the same as Wuthering Heights. People split 50-50, either you like the book or you hate it. I didn't exactly hate it, but I kind of hated it. The thing is that this book just mentions the main idea of the book is the main character is everything he hates, and it is kind of this like irony and kind of exploring this whole thing, and it's like this whole book is just restating the same thing over and over and over and over again. In every chapter, on every page, the same thing is just repeated over and over. Like, this could have been a short story, you know? Like, this could have been a short story on like 5 pages max. But this was a whole book. Didn't particularly like the story. Like, I understood the message, and the message I feel like is pretty important. That's just how I felt, and I don't know, I wouldn't recommend to read it, honestly. Next book I read is Dandelion Wine by Ray Bradbury, and I loved this book. You know, Ray Bradbury has a very specific writing style, in my opinion. Like, he writes in a specific way, and at first, I remember I picked this book up like last year, started reading it, and on the 28th page I closed the book. I like didn't pick it up until this year, because the way he wrote, it just seemed for some reason quite weird to me, and I just didn't at first enjoy reading it. But this year, I love this book so much. A lot of people like to say, oh, it's like a book about summer, it makes you feel about childhood. It didn't make me think about summer, it didn't make me think about childhood, but it made me think about life. I cried several times throughout this book, because this book brings, you know, brings up such themes as life, death, the meaning of life, the like friendship, the loss of friendship, you know, just everything, and every single part of life that you can think of, you know, philosophical part of life, this book brings up. And it is such an interesting one, and it's also pretty interesting that it's kind of from a perspective of a boy who is learning this, and you're on a road to learn life with him. And it is such a great book in that sense, and I loved it so much. The last book that I'm currently reading, and I have a few pages left, is The Collector by John Fowles. I hope I'm saying his last name right. But this is another book that I didn't think I would enjoy in particular. I took it from my parents' shelf and just decided to read it because it was standing there and I was quite interested in it, but I didn't know if I would like it. And I've actually noticed this pattern. The books that I thought I was gonna like The Catcher in the Rye and Wuthering Heights, I didn't end up liking at all. And the books that I didn't think I was gonna like The Girl on the Train and The Collector, I ended up really, really liking. I am in love with this book. It's so interesting. It's so interesting from many types of way, because throughout the whole book you're just trying to understand the psychology behind the main character, and for the whole book you're wondering like what's gonna happen. Like you have an idea in your head what's gonna happen. And I feel like a lot of people, when they start reading this book, and especially when they read certain, you know, there are certain words and certain almost like Easter eggs, you know, of what is gonna happen at the end, or what you think is gonna happen at the end. And I kind of like, when I started reading this book and when I got to like the 100th page, I already knew, or like I thought I knew what was gonna happen. Like I'm still not at the end, so I don't know. You think that you know what is gonna happen, and the interesting part is that you don't know how it is gonna come to the end. Like what is gonna happen that will make it end the way you think it's gonna end. And it's a very, as I said, it's a very interesting book from the psychological perspective. You're interested in the main character and his thoughts and his actions and what is next. You're interested in the other character that is very prevalent in the book. You're just interested in their dynamic. You're interested in what's happening. And I love how, you know, in the middle of the book we switch perspectives. Like for the first part of the book, the collector himself is telling the story, and then there is another part of the book where another character is telling the story from her perspective. And it is very, very interesting because you see the same situations unfold from different perspectives, and it really breaks the character you created in your head. Because from the collector's perspective, you've been reading this book and you have, you know, a certain characteristic build of a second character, and then you start reading the book from her perspective, and certain situations just break in your mind, and you understand how, I don't know if it was the, you know, the intent, but for me personally it was very interesting to deep dive into humans and how one side of the story and how humans' perspective can lie a lot to the human like themselves. So it's a very interesting book. I would actually really recommend you reading it. Anyways, these were all the books I read over the past 3 months, and I hope you find an interesting book that you would like to read. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you on Friday. So yeah, thank you again for watching. Bye!